Mr. Majewski's Anatomy 32 class lecture, chapter 14, part 2, venules, veins, and some circulation. So, as was said before, after the blood flows through the capillary bed, it will return and drain into the venules to begin its flow back toward the heart. Now, venules are very microscopic, and they possess very thin walls. And they may or may not possess tunica media layers, and it has very sparse externa interna layers. So basically, venules at the minimum is tunica interna and tunica externa, and both of those being very thin. And these vessels are also referred to as the afferent vessels. So it turns out there are two categories of venules. You have the post-capillary venules, which are attached to both capillaries and the meta-arterial. They have loose, organized intercellular junctions, not quite as loose as capillaries, but still, pretty loose. And they lack the tunica media. So the cool thing about these post-capillary venules is that they also function as sites of microcirculation. So basically, nutrients and waste can be exchanged from surrounding tissues at post-capillary venules. And then there's the muscular venules. Muscular venules possess 1 to 2 layers of smooth muscle cells, hence the muscular venule name, and they are unable to transfer material. So the only kinds of vessels that can transfer material are capillaries and postcapillary venules. And it turns out that both venules are extremely distendable, so they can stretch a large amount. And because of this, they actually act as a blood reservoir. So about 64% of the total blood in your body are found in venules. All right, now let's talk about veins. So here is an image of a generic vein, and again, veins should have the tunica interna, the tunica media, and the tunica externa. So in tunica interna, exactly as we expect, you get the endothelial cells, you have the basement membrane. Oh, wait, I lied. It lacks the internal elastic lamina. So it's just cells with the basement membrane that they need in order to be properly joined together. The tunica media has the smooth muscle layer, but it also lacks the external elastic lamina. And then the tunica externa is the normal collection of collagen fibers, connective tissue to define the vessel. So veins lack the lamina layers, probably because they're not quite as stretchy. So another feature of veins that is distinct is veins possess little valves throughout their length. And these are basically thin folds of the tunica interna, of those endothelial cells. And they basically act as little pockets, and so if blood tries to flow back down a vein, they'll get filled in a pocket, it'll close up, and the blood will not be able to backflow. And you need these valves because veins have a much lower blood pressure than arteries. So arteries need to be stretchy because they got a huge amount of pressure coming right out of that heart, boom, 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 and then by the time it gets to the veins, a lot of that pressure has dispersed, and so blood is a little more sluggish, so you need these valves to prevent that backflow. Now, should the valves not function correctly, then you can get some various health issues. However, here we see examples of healthy vein valves. Again, thin layers connected to the outer wall, the inner wall of the blood vessel. And you can see that what also helps to push the veins blood back up to the heart or down to the heart or whatever is the contraction of skeletal muscles. So skeletal muscles just contracting help to act like a pump to push the veins blood load in the correct direction. However, of course, it's possible for those valves not to work sufficiently. And if this happens, you can get a condition referred to as varicose veins. So here you can see that you're getting a backflow of blood building up in these veins because the valves aren't functioning proper. Anastomes. Anastomes are basically just a union of blood vessels that supply in the same area. So basically, for instance, here you can see in the hand you got lots of little blood vessels all connected to each other for no apparent reason, but apparently there is a reason. The reason is to compensate for obstruction, so that if one blood vessel, for whatever reason, isn't functioning properly, that area of the hand, in this case, will still be able to receive blood and get its proper nutrients and get rid of its wastes. So now let's talk about some of the circulatory routes. So basically, a circulatory route is going to include arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, and veins, in the most part. One of the big types of coronary circulation that we talked about already is coronary circulation, where we've got the blood vessels that are bringing nutrients to the heart tissue itself, because we want our heart to be properly nourished. And so that's going to include blood entering the coronary circulation to the right and left coronary arteries, and then eventually returning to the right atrium via the coronary sinus. Pulmonary circulation we've also talked about, and that's where blood is flowing in arteries to the lungs and then returning through veins. And the cool thing here is that this is the only place where you see the blood in the arteries as being deoxygenated, and so arteries color them blue, and the veins are carrying oxygenated blood and are thereby colored red. So try not to get that confused when that sort of issue pops up in the lab portion of the exam. And then, of course, there is systemic circulation. Systemic circulation throughout the entire body, caused by blood flowing out of the left ventricle. And it turns out that there are more veins than arteries, so you often end up with a few extra named veins that are of prime importance than you do arteries. And for this unit, you're going to need to know the basic pathway of the flow of blood, focusing on the blood vessels that are in your study guide. So basically, though, just to give you a few bits of information to help you start on learning those systems of circulation, the blood is going to enter the systemic system through the artery. So you've got the ascending artery, the arch of the artery, and then the descending artery, and almost right away at the top of this arch of the artery, aorta, you have blood branching off to go to the head and upper arms and upper chest through the brachiocephalic trunk, the left common carotid up to the head, and the left subclavian to the left arm area. And then you'll want to be able to follow that drop of blood. For instance, if it went out of the arch of the aorta and entered the brachiocephalic trunk, you want to be able to follow it on its route through the named blood vessels that we have to learn for this unit. And then also on its return trip back from, say, the hand up to the heart again. So you'll see questions where it's like following a drop of blood, starting in the aorta, what route will it take through the following blood vessels? And then you have to put those blood vessels in the correct order. There's also cerebral circulation, which is basically just a subcategory of systemic circulation, but it's focusing on the head, and especially the brain. And as you can see, you can really see how there are a lot more veins around in the head than you have arteries, and this is partly because you get additional fluids from the cerebral spinal fluid being dumped into the veins up in the brain. So here is an example of, from your book, the whole cerebral circulation being charted out, and how you have it entering, say, through the left internal carotid artery, and it could go perhaps to the left anterior cerebral artery or the left middle cerebral artery, or maybe it's going to enter the circle of Willis. And basically, this is just pathways you're going to need to know for the exam. But let's particularly focus on that circle of Willis, or cerebral artery circle. So basically, this is one of the few places where you see sort of like this circular structure of arteries attached to each other. So for instance, blood will be coming up through the vertebral arteries left and right. They'll fuse to form the basilar artery, and then that's going to branch out into the posterior cerebral arteries, right and left. And then over here you have the internal carotid artery that's then going to branch out into the anterior and middle cerebral arteries. However, you got these special connecting arteries or communicating arteries. You got two posterior communicating arteries attaching the posterior cerebral arteries to the middle cerebral artery, and then you've got another communicating artery, the anterior communicating artery, connecting the two anterior cerebral arteries. And so this forms sort of the circular structure. And why is this important? Well, we really want to make sure we're always getting proper circulation in the brain. And so by having the circular route, should there be some sort of obstruction in one of the pathways, you'll be able to bypass it and keep the brain properly nourished, at least to an extent. Obviously, if the blockage isn't too big of a blood vessel or is too severe, then you're in trouble. So again, as I mentioned, there are a lot more veins than arteries. So here you can see that pretty clearly. You'll notice that we have a number of veins that are referred to as sinuses: the superior sagittal sinus, the right transverse sinus, so forth. If you remember from chapter Unit 2, when we had the groove for the transverse sinus, well, this is the sinus that fits in that groove of the occipital bone. And it's basically, a sinus is a type of vein that is kind of wide, and it has a thin endothelial wall with no smooth muscle to alter its diameter. So basically, it's just a big open tunnel that can't adjust the flow. Finally, there's also these things called portal circulation. Portal circulation specifically means when you have veins connecting to capillary beds, which is a rare occurrence. Here is two examples of portal circulation. You've got the hepatic portal circulation, where blood from the intestines and stomach, with lots of nutrients in it, flow into the hepatic portal vein to enter the liver, where they'll go through another capillary bed and then enter the hepatic veins to enter the inferior vena cava. And here is the hypophyseal portal, where you have a route that allows for the hormones from the hypothalamus to reach the anterior pituitary gland through the hypophyseal portal veins, again connecting to capillary beds. Finally, a problem that people could have that relates to blood vessels is hypertension. Primary hypertension is when you persistently have an elevated blood pressure, and usually there's not an easily identifiable cause. Secondary hypertension is, again, persistent elevated blood pressure, but now there seems to be a cause that can be identified and treated more directly. Examples of causes include obstruction of renal blood flow, because in the kidneys we are regulating the blood volume, the hypersecretion of arterial aldosterone, which is a hormone that regulates as well the blood volume. So if your blood volume is way too high, that means the blood pressure is going to be high. And then also another issue is the hypersecretion of epinephrine, which can lead to a constant increase in heart rate. If the heart rate is beating faster and harder, that also will increase the blood pressure. All right, that's it for this unit. Chapter. I hope you enjoyed it.